The CEO of the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. One of our core pillars is education. With an educated workforce, we have economic development. We build that human capital we need, which is our most important asset. We are honored to partner with many of you, but especially with the San Antonio ISD Foundation and their board of directors. Let's give them a round of applause for being champions for education. Also want to thank my great friends and business partners at the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, Richard Perez and Sean Kennedy. Let's give them a round of applause, and their staff for the great job they do, and they're championing education. And then on behalf of the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, our board of directors, our chair, Erica Prosper Nuremberg, let's give our leadership a round of applause also, please. Thank you all. I'm so excited to introduce our first guests. They require that each of you stand at this time for the U.S. Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in welcoming to the front Twain dual language students to recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. De juro lealtad a ti, Texas, un estado ante Dios, uno e indivisible. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you all very much. Let's give them one more round of applause. Thank you. Gracias. Buenos días. Muchísimas gracias. Tengan un feliz día. Si no tienen nada que hacer, vengan a la oficina que me ayuden un poquito. Come on by the office later on and help me out if you guys are free to later on today. Thank you. I mean, we only employ millennials anyway these days, you know. I'd like to introduce Manny Ruiz. He's the chairman of the board of the SAISD Foundation, and he will do our invocation. Manny Ruiz.
Let's pray. Our Father God, we confess that oftentimes we are discouraged by the things that are happening around us, to include the recent violence that occurred in Parkland, Florida. And while these tragedies seem to be out of our control, we have the peace in knowing that we serve a God who is in control. And so our commitment is to pray for those whose loved ones were impacted by this violent act, and may we always be reminded that each day that we get to spend with loved ones is truly a blessing. And while our lives tend to be surrounded by unpleasant things, we are reminded that this morning represents the good things in our lives that we are a part of. Our prayer is that you will continue to give wisdom and guidance to our superintendent and his staff as they lead our school district. And as we are about to hear about the vision and state of the district, we are reminded that to not have a vision is to not have direction as we strive to improve the lives of our students through a quality education. We give thanks to our teachers for their passion, their love, and their commitment that they have for our students and for their willingness to serve, and in doing so, making a difference. And so, Father, we ask that you would bless our time together. We ask that you would bless our food. For we ask all these things in your Son's name. Amen.
Thank you, Manny. I'd like to once again thank our Twain dual language students for reciting the U.S. Pledge and the Texas Pledge. Thank you, Manny, for representing Techstar Bank and on their executive committee of the SAISD Foundation. We have many leaders in the education community with us today. I'd like to, before I thank our sponsors and break for a quick breakfast, before we introduce the main star of the show, Superintendent Pedro Martinez, I'd like to ask the San Antonio Independent School District trustees and the SAISD Foundation Board, SA Chamber Board, and Hispanic Chamber Board members to all stand. Let's give them a round of applause for the great job that they do. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. We have so many other key leaders with us this morning, and in the interest of time, I apologize that I will not introduce Eva Longoria, who's on my list up here, and many others. It really is on my VIP list, but I would not want to be rude. But if we could ask all of our nonprofit leaders, elected officials, and city officials to stand, we'd like to give them a round of applause also. Please stand so we can thank you. So with that, I'd like to thank our sponsors. This is a sold-out breakfast. We even have tables up there. So thanks to, hello, how are you? Good morning. It's good to see you again. Thank you to Frost Bank. They're our high school sponsor. First Mark Credit Union, our middle school sponsor. And then our elementary school sponsors, the CPS Energy, the Barry Holsworth, Spurs Sports and Entertainment, Whataburger, and the San Antonio Housing Authority. Let's give all of our great sponsors a round of applause. So with that, it is a great privilege to work with each of you to advance our educational efforts. Please take a 10-minute break, enjoy your breakfast, and I will come back and introduce our Superintendent Pedro Martinez, who will talk about SAISD. And then as we close, my colleague Richard Perez, the CEO of the San Antonio Chamber, will open it up to questions and answers. So thank you all very much. Enjoy your break. I'll be right back. Thank you again to each of you for joining us. Each of you plays such an important role in making sure our economic future has that workforce through our young people, through education. And one of those leaders that we love to hear from every year is Pedro Martinez. He joined the San Antonio School District as superintendent on June of 2015. And he's brought a laser focus on improving our academic achievement, aspiring our graduates to greater heights. In fact, more students are performing at higher levels and are better prepared for college and careers. In his first State of the District address in January of 2016, he unveiled his SAISD Blueprint for Excellence, Target 2020, and laid out his strategies for the district to achieve those by the end of the 2020 school year. It had 10 academic goals that were set, and the plan is supported by 5 pillars: academic excellence, talent management, culture shift, stakeholder engagement, and fiscal management. Before coming to SAISD, Pedro was a superintendent in residence for the Nevada Department of Education and was responsible for advising the governor's office and the state superintendent of instruction on education policy decisions. Prior to that, he served as superintendent of the 64,000 student Washoe County School District covering the Reno, Nevada area. While in that county, Mr. Martinez improved graduation rates, increased the percentage of students participating in and passing the advanced placement exams. He also has previously served as the chief financial officer at the Chicago Public Schools, the nation's third largest school district, under the leadership of Arnie Duncan, the former Secretary of Education. His history reflects that he's a data-driven leader with a strong financial background and an in-depth knowledge of academic reform strategies. Pedro has more than 20 years of experience in the private, nonprofit, and public education sectors. He holds a Master's of Business Administration from DePaul University and a bachelor's degree from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. He's also a graduate of the Broad Superintendent's Academy. When I first met him, I was impressed with all of this, but more impressed that his family's from Aguascalientes in Mexico and are immigrant families like many of us in this country that have made it great. And that innovation that he brings to his job every day is why we're so proud to have us all be here to celebrate his work. Please join me in joining us at the podium, our superintendent from the San Antonio School District, Mr. Pedro Martinez.
Thank you, senor.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. So first of all, thank you, and I'm just so blessed to be here in front of you. So I warn you, a couple little warnings. I have a lot of slides, so I'm going to go pretty fast just because I want to be sensitive to your time. I will be emphasizing some points across the presentation. And really what my goal is, first, as always, I always want to give you context of what's happening not only in our district, what's happening in our city, in our nation, specifically around K-12 education, how we fit into that, how that's shaping the way we look at our work. I want to show you the opportunities and what our children are able to do, but also what the challenges are. So, we'll kick it off. So, of course, our mission and vision drive all of our work. We are in the initial stages of a transformation in our district, and one of the things our trustees and I always talked about, this is the transformation. This isn't about marginal improvement, and we are setting our goal around the nation. This is about becoming a model urban school district. Our vision is very clear, and we're very explicit. We don't hide the fact that it is relentless. We are obsessed with making sure that our children are prepared for the best options possible. And frankly, we're very biased in favor of college. We really are. And we always get into this conversation about college. College, by the way, with the big C. In other words, that means community colleges, universities, tier 1 colleges. And again, I'll show you a lot of data, how we're making it happen for our children. So let me first talk about our challenges. And again, I want you, when you see some of this information, again, this is about context. So this is a chart that shows you college attendance rates, and each of the lines shows you the different quartiles of income of families. So we always hear in the news about the top 1%, the top 10% of wealth. Well, so the top line is the top 25%, right? And this is nationwide. The bottom line is the bottom 25% in terms of income, right? And this is family income. And one of the things that you see in this chart, and this goes back to 1970, so well over 48 years. And what it shows you is that, back in 1970, children coming from lower income families, about 46% were attending college. Again, this is college, all kinds of colleges, technical colleges, community colleges, universities. And you can see families in upper income were much higher, closer to 80%. The good news here is that gap started closing. Very consistent, by the way, with the fact that our nation is right now at the highest level in high school graduation rates ever in the history of this country. So very consistent. In fact, you can see now, even though there's still a gap, it's narrowed from that top quartile to the bottom quartile. But here's the challenge. We have more children than ever attending college, This graph shows you children that are actually attending universities, again, broken down by the same quartiles of income. And look what you see. In 1970, if you came from a family in the bottom 25% of income, your graduation rate, and this is graduation rates out of universities over 6 years, was 6%. If you were in the top quartile income, it was 40%. Fast forward 48 years, and this is nationwide, ladies and gentlemen, our bottom quartile is now at 9%. Our second quartile is at 17%. Meanwhile, children coming from the top quartile is at 77%. The gap has never been wider. There's conversations about opportunity gaps. So this is the context why nationally people start asking, what is going on with our educational system? By the way, very consistent with the fact that our rankings nationwide in terms of K-12, as a developed country, we're now at the lower tier of developed countries nationwide in almost all core subjects, very consistent with this data. Because what's interesting, and you'll see the disconnect, so there's a disconnect between what's happening in K-12 and what's happening in higher ed, right? And there's several reasons for that, and we'll talk about that. One of the questions I ask is, okay, I just saw this data, how does that affect our kids, right? So how many of our children are reaching these different quartiles? And by the way, you see the income levels. So the bottom line is what we are seeing is that 98% of our children are in the bottom two quartiles, are coming from families in those bottom two quartiles of income. So this is what it means, folks. A child that's born in the West Side in 780207, which is my highest poverty zip code, when they're born, their probability of graduating from a university is under 10%. Just from being born in that zip code, being born in that level of poverty. Compared to, again, a child that's born in a family that's coming from a higher income. By the way, you see zero. We actually do have families that are in the top quartile, but it's so small, and this is all rounded, that it isn't high enough to even go to 1%. Because by the way, there might be some families here that are attending my schools and say, hey, I'm actually in the top. I'll hide a little bit. You're counted, except, again, it's just the numbers are so small, we don't even get to 1%. So again, context, right? So here we have this national challenge, and this is the demographics of my children. So what I'm going to show you today, though, is that it's not the children, though. Because I will tell you that when we do the right supports, when we give them the access to a high-quality education, I can easily show you results that will counter some of this data that we're seeing nationally. Doesn't mean that the work isn't difficult. Doesn't mean that we don't have to think differently. So you might say, well, Pedro, what about Texas, right? Texas, I mean, Texas is different, and, we're very proud of our state and everything we've done in education. So this is what is the most recent information. This is the 2010 cohort, which this data means that this would have been kids that are going into universities. This would have been them graduating in 2016, right? Over 6 years in a university. And what we see in Texas is that 26% of all children in Texas graduating are getting either an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, right? This is everything, associates or bachelors. Again, I don't know about you. Again, it's concerning to me how low this number is. This is all of Texas, regardless of what income level it is, right? Those are the challenges. So again, context. When you hear about, what's happening, the assessments have changed in the state, and we're going from tax to star, and we're changing standards, and it's getting more rigorous. What is happening? And, we're being obsessed by testing. And nationally, by the way, the same conversations are happening. This is why they're happening. Because people are asking, how can we have the highest graduation rate ever in our country in high schools, but yet we're seeing these type of outcomes? And one of the things that's fascinating is when you do this research of this data, this college data has been consistent for the last 30 or 40 years. The indicators have been always showing these huge gaps. But what we find is that the standards, right, this is what every state gets to decide. What should a child know in kindergarten? What should a child know in 12th grade? The standards have never been aligned to what higher ed requires. Just another data point, even though our K-12 education, we've fallen far behind compared to other developed countries, our higher ed was still the top in the world. Right? So there's this disconnect that people are trying to figure out. And you can get into the debate about, hey, should everybody go to college? Well, here, how many folks here would have the life you have if it wasn't for your education? Right? So that's the question that we always have to ask. And for me, is what options are we giving children? And so for us, I showed you the slide about what the makeup of our kids said. And I said, you know, there's been a lot of smarter people that have been in this job before me. And again, we've been struggling with performance for decades. We better really understand what's happening in our district. So we said, you know, first of all, when you look at the measure of poverty, in our world, we use if a family qualifies for free and reduced lunch, and the average criteria, you see it here, is about $44,000 for a family size of 4. If you make that or less with a family size of 4, you qualify for free and reduced lunch. And so when we talk about poverty, everybody talks about, oh my God, my poverty numbers are increasing. You know, the majority of Bexar County now is qualifying for free and reduced lunch. Texas is qualifying. I consider that a very antiquated measure. Because when you look at the national poverty line, it's actually $24,000. And I don't know about you, $20,000 is not a small difference. So we said, okay, let's even go deeper in our district. So we have over 50,000 students. We know their addresses. We use census data. And then we ask the questions. Okay, so does median income matter? We think it does. Does it matter if are you coming from a single parent household? We think it does. By the way, half of my family is single parent households. Does it matter if the parents have either professors, because I have some parents that are professors in universities, right? Their children are in my schools, and I also have families that are homeless. Does it matter the level of education that those parents have? My parents had a second grade education versus, you know, other parents may have master's degrees and PhDs. Does that matter? We think it does. Does it matter if you own your own home? Because if you ever hear Dr. Drennan's presentation, she always reminds me, this is Pedro, it's not just median income, it's about wealth. And guess what the number one driver of wealth is? It is your home. So does it matter if you are a renter and don't own your own home? We think it does. So we took all this information and we divvied it up. We used census blocks, so we took every address and we figured out, and we broke these, we grouped all of our families. And so we call them blocks because the census has 300, in our district we have 320 census blocks. And what we found, and we said, block 1, which is more my middle class families, they own their own home, they tend to be 2-parent households, they have a higher level of education, median income for those families was $50,000. Good to know. My block 4, which I call the poorest of the poor, single parent households, they don't own their own home, median income is under $20,000. In some of my communities, the majority of the adults don't even have a high school diploma. I have very large numbers of illiterate adults in some neighborhoods. That's my block 4 families, folks. By the way, I have over 7,000 children that live in public housing rentals. Their median income is under $12,000. I have over 2,000 children that are homeless. I mean, we see these children every single day. We know, so this is not just data for us. We know who they are. And so now we have it, and we can see school by school what is the diversity of our students so that we can align our resources, right? So let's learn from this. This is not, by the way, an excuse by any means. Because, by the way, I will show you schools that are, regardless of these demographics, they are actually outperforming many of their peers, not only in our district, but in other districts that don't have these similar challenges. So again, this does not dictate the future of these children, but we need to understand it, because if I don't understand it, how do I ensure that I only have limited resources? So where do I put clinical social workers? Where I only have limited resources to have communities and schools in city year in my schools, where do I put them if I don't have this type of data, right? So that's what we did. What was fascinating when we did this, we also have children that don't live in our district, and we have their addresses. So we said, what if we map them out, right? Because we know where they live. And you see the little box on the left, the second one, what we found is the majority of our outer district families were block 1. Were block 1 families. We're like, that is really interesting. So what is that telling us? So then we said, let's use this system for the entire county. So we overlaid this block system county-wide, and look at the colors. So the red is block 4 families, which is the poorest of the poor. Green is our block 1 families, right? Look what happens when we overlay this on the county. What we learned is that between San Antonio ISD, Harlandale, South San, and Edgewood, by the way, when some of my colleagues saw this from those districts, they're like, hallelujah, Pedro, finally somebody's talking about this. We have 82% of the block 4 families in this county. Look at the amount of green that surrounds us everywhere. So when I share with you that free and reduced lunch is an antiquated way of looking at poverty, this is what shows you how antiquated it is. And I'm not saying that our other districts don't have challenges, but the work is different. And so, when you compare us, I'm very competitive, by the way, and you'll see in some of my slides how competitive I am, but you need to understand the context of this work. Because if we're comparing how schools are doing, how children are doing, we need to put it in the right context, not to make excuses, but to have the conversations, whether it's at the city level, at the county level, at an employer. How do we shape the future of this city? How do we help these communities? Because I will tell you, sadly, the way economic development has happened in this city has driven much of this. And right now, you can live in certain parts of our city, like Stone Oak or La Cantera, and never have to ever visit any of my neighborhoods. In fact, I even would wonder how many have ever visited one of my neighborhoods, because you don't have to. So then you don't have to see it, right? You don't have to see it. And if you don't have to see it, you don't have to do anything about it. And one of the things I'll tell you about our state that's very challenging is we're one of the most underfunded states when it comes to education. And they don't want to see it. Although the commissioner has asked me now to present this information, because he's done this similar analysis now, he's using it now to look at the entire state. And so so again, the conversations are happening. So, okay, Pedro, what does that really mean? I mean, I really don't understand what that means besides, yeah, you have a tough job, basically, right? Is that what you're telling us? Okay, you have a tough job. This is what it means, folks. So, recently our amazing community approved a bond for us to invest $450 million in our buildings. We said we will have to raise taxes about 12 pennies, and we'll do that gradually, about 2 to 3 pennies every year. Northside just approved to go to the voters. They'll be going soon to the voters asking for $849 million, and they said they're going to have to raise their taxes just under 5 pennies. When you do the math, what it means is that for our taxpayers in Northside, 1 penny that they pay is the equivalent of 4.5 pennies that one of my taxpayers pays. And you might say, wait a minute, Pedro, but Northside is much bigger than you, so that's not a fair comparison. Folks, they're not 4.5 times bigger than us. If they were, they'd be the city of Houston. They're not the city of Houston. So is it right that that same penny of tax that my parents who are making under $20,000, right, whether they're renters or owners, and they're paying that tax one way or the other, that it's worth less? And how does that play out when my children from San Antonio ISD go to a regional event, a decathlon or a sporting event, and they walk into these amazing high schools that have cost over $150 million to build, right? They're palaces. Kudos to them, by the way. This is not, hey, I love the fact that they did that. But then I look at my buildings. We just, our newest high school, Highlands High School, we were able to invest $60 million there. And it wasn't because we didn't want to invest $100 million. We can't generate it. By the way, if I compare it to Northeast, the gap is even bigger. And it's growing every single year. So, does this have ramifications? Absolutely. And it's very visible. So again, but if you don't have to see it, you won't know. And again, this is about context, folks. And what's sad is that in our state, there is a very clear correlation with high poverty schools and low performing schools. It is very, very correlated. And again, this is not to say this is an excuse for us to perform worse, but I will tell you this, and I'll say this right now, and my trustees know this, and we talk about this all the time. Sadly, in our district, we know that historically we have not done the best for our children. And we own that, by the way. And when they hired me, we had that tough conversation and said, are you ready to own this and to make the necessary changes? Because the challenges are there, right? And of course, and I'm finding, by the way, the challenges are much deeper than I realize. That's okay. I'm up for a challenge. But are we ready? And those are the conversations my trustees and I, we have on a regular basis, by the way. Sometimes our closed session discussions are even longer than our open closed discussions, because this is what we're talking about. So those are the dots of low performing schools, what they call considered improvement required campuses, 371. 91% of those campuses have at least 60% of their children qualifying for free and reduced lunch. Very strong correlation. And I just said free and reduced lunch is an antiquated way of even looking at poverty. But even with that, that's what the numbers are, statewide. 371 campuses. By the way, and I got the permission of the commissioner to say this because I never say anything without getting his permission on this kind of stuff. With the new standards and changes in the accountability system, easily this number will at least double or triple statewide. Easily. And the only reason it won't be higher is because he's worried about the politics our governor's running for election. I shouldn't have said that. But, sorry, Commissioner. But, but that's what's happening. Very strong correlation on this, right? So these are the challenges. Again, context, just context. So how are we doing our work? We talked about our academic goals in the past. We talked about our pillars. What I will tell you is that we're starting to see our pillars really intersect. Because as we're creating high quality options, we're finding some amazing partners, right? That have a track record in doing this work, because we can't just repeat the same practices of the past. And we're creating some very innovative choices. And by the way, we are aggressive as heck about talent. There are certain districts that I can't drive into anymore because, they already know, and they say, you cannot talk to my staff, Pedro, because we'll have wine over that another day. But we are being very aggressive. And we're grounded by making sure we're changing our culture, because we got to do our part. We got to be focused on students. We have to have high expectations. That is the culture shift we're making. And we have to be accountable to our taxpayers. Because again, I'm never going to lose sight of the fact that my families earn very little. And by the way, over 70% of them approved 2 tax increases. That was almost a double-digit tax increase. And that's something that I have to respect and honor. So you've heard about some of our amazing innovative schools. And these are, in many ways, first of their kind for Bexar County. Twain Dual Language, you just heard the children, the first all 100% dual language school in Bexar County. All children, by the time they finish 8th grade, will be biliterate. And what I love is also it's about culture. It's about appreciating the history of San Antonio. But each of these different programs, and I'll show you some data in a little while, are generating such a buzz and such a demand from parents. We are also redefining career tech. Cass Tech, if you haven't been there, please go visit it. It's like a high school that is like never been done before, especially here in Texas. All focused on helping children, connecting them with the tech sector. Because there's amazing jobs. And I just need children to see that they can be in one of those jobs. Doesn't matter if they're coming from a poor zip code. CIA, Culinary Institute of America, some of the most famous chefs here in San Antonio are graduates from the CIA. And what I love is they're now at Lanier. They have certified our teachers. We're using their curriculum. My kids that are passionate about this work, who probably want to own their own restaurants one day, right? The next Johnny Hernandez. They are getting a year's worth of college transfer credit into the CIA. It's working so well that we're going to go from 1 high school this year to 4 next year. So these are the partnerships that we're creating. Again, it looks different. By the way, CIA, high maintenance. Love them though, but they are sticklers for quality. High maintenance. You have no idea. And at the same time, we're asking our existing schools, you got to get stronger. YWLA, Delia is our amazing principal that's here in the room. Not only one of the top high schools in San Antonio, in the country, folks. National Blue Ribbon School now. Travis Early College, where almost 80% of our graduates get associate's degrees. Listen to this, parents. In 4 years of high school, they also get an associate's degree. Right? They're already halfway there to a bachelor's coming out of high school. Now a National Blue Ribbon School. We will have the largest international baccalaureate program in the county. And for any of you who've ever traveled abroad, the International Baccalaureate program is considered the most rigorous in the world. And we've had a small program at Burbank, which is expanding significantly. Jefferson will be a lead. Their feeders will be lead. And we will have the largest international baccalaureate program in the county. And we also have amazing turnaround stories happening in our schools. This is a percentage. So the word is getting out. So as we're expanding these choices, this is the percentage of out-of-district families that are applying to these choices. Ladies and gentlemen, in some of our schools, if I could, and I wouldn't politically, parents, so don't worry about this, but I could fill all the seats with out-of-district families. That's how high the demand is. And one of my favorite compliments I get is, my goodness, Pedro, for the first time, that I can remember in the last 10 plus years, San Antonio ISD is on the map. People are talking about these options. And what I love is they're willing to give us a chance. By the way, we are sticklers for quality. We are sticklers on who we're partnering with. And there is a deep partnership with each one of them, whether it's Trinity University at ALA or our partnership with Relay at Ogden. These are deep partnerships. Here's a map. So the blue is the district boundaries. Each of those dots are applications. We had over 7,000 applications for 3,000 choice seats that we did. And look at where they're coming from, all over the county. And as I said, many strategic partners. We are also elevating our highest performing teachers. We're creating residency labs. We will have the largest residency program, definitely in Bexar County, one of the largest in Texas. Think of the medical industry, where we're taking residents, individuals that are in our schools all year, just like residents in the medical profession, under expert master teachers, and creating our own pipeline for talent. Like I said, I've been aggressive around expanding talent. I want to just acknowledge my cabinet members. These are just the newest additions. By the way, every one of these individuals, renowned in the state, in many cases even renowned nationally. I just want to ask my team to stand up that's here. Please stand up and just be acknowledged, because your amazing work and what you're doing for us. So here's what I'm really pumped about. Here's what I'm really excited about. Let me show you some data points that we're seeing with our kids, right? Because again, the biggest takeaway I want you to have, regardless of all these challenges, and this is what gets me motivated, it's not our kids, folks. It's not our kids. If we do the right things, if we work with the community, we work with the parents, it is amazing what our children will show us. So first of all, we're seeing the highest graduation rate ever in San Antonio. We're now at 85%. Dropout rates now are at 10%. Our goal is to be at 90% by 2020. We see that as very realistic. We have more children going to college, and the work is still early. So right now we're up from 50% to 54%. This is a very conservative number because we are very careful about sharing this type of data. We will get more final data in the next few months, and we know we'll get a couple percentage points that'll be higher. What I love, though, is look at the mix of colleges. We're going from 40% going to four-year colleges to 48%. And we have more than double the number of students that are attending today top tier 1 universities, not only in Texas, but all over the country. Some examples of here: Pomona College, Middlebury, Stanford. By the way, here in Texas, Texas Tech, UT Austin, College Station, Rice University. We are doing it, folks, and we're pushing this. Our goal by 2020 to our 80% graduates will be attending college, at least half going to four-year universities, at least 10% of my overall graduates going to Tier 1. By the way, I want to acknowledge we have students representing my high schools from the class of 2018, so I want to just stand up and I want to acknowledge you. Look at some of the universities that they've already been accepted in. Smith, Wellesley, Middlebury, Carnegie Mellon, Howard University. So again, this is just a sample of what's coming for the class of 2018. So again, it's not the children. But you might say, okay, wait a minute, Pedro, you just showed me a whole bunch of slides. Yeah, there's more kids going to college, but are they going to graduate? Right? Because you just laid that whole case out of what's happening nationally. Well, so let me share with you. So what we do is we back map. So we say, okay, what does it take for a child to graduate from college? Because by the way, that is who we want to be. So I want to make that really clear again. Yes, do we care about STAR tests? Absolutely. Do we care about the state accountability system? Absolutely. It drives much of our work. But who we want to be is the district that defies the odds about children attending and graduating from college. That is who we want to be. That is why that goal is so clear. Because we're tracking out every student starting with the class of 2017. We will know how they're doing after their first year of college, their second year, all the way through graduation. That is the direction we're going, folks. Regardless, because the accountability system standards will all evolve, but that's not what the work is about. If you're a parent coming into my district, I want to make sure that that's what you know. I don't care if you're studying in our amazing Montessori school, or at our ALA school, or CAT school, it doesn't matter. Multiple pathways, we want to motivate our children. But our goal is graduation from college. That is who we want to be. And we just had an amazing gift from Valero, $8.4 million over the next 5 years. That's just kicked in this year. That's again to get us to our 80% goal. We now have 19 college advisors. All they do is match the children with top colleges based on their academics as well as scholarships. That's all they do. So one of the best indicators about whether a child is going to be successful in college is SAT. And one of the things we did, and what you see on the one graph on the side, is you see 3 bars, the state of Texas, the children that are qualifying for free and reduced lunch in Texas, as well as our district. And you can see on one side, we've increased now the number of children, they take it in their junior year, taking the SAT, and then they take it again in senior year, taking the SAT or ACT to 90%. By the way, there's some risk here. Because when you have more children taking it, these are not always your highest motivated children, right? Generally, the ones that take it are the more motivated students. But we said, no, it doesn't matter. It's about access, right? Here's what we saw in performance on the other side. So back in 2015, only 5% of our children were college ready on the SAT. I announced that when I first revealed my goals. People were shocked that it was that low. By the way, you can see the state of Texas, overall it's 24%. For free and reduced lunch children, it's 10%. And again, antiquated way of looking at poverty, but that's what we use. 2016, we saw a little bump, but with the 90% taking it, look at where we're at now in college readiness, 9%. We have closed that first gap with other free and reduced lunch children. Next destination is the overall state goal. But what I love is that what this means in numbers of students, 150% increase in the number of students that are college ready is what it equates to, because so many more students are taking the assessment and the percentage is rising. One of the early indicators, so another way to know whether your child's going to be successful in college is remediation. And in Texas, they use what they call the TSI assessment. So if you have a family, if you're going to school in Texas, you need to know this. Because if your child does not pass this exam, they have to take remedial classes. One of the biggest indicators of whether your child will graduate from a college, whether it's a community college or university. So look at the bars. We're the dark blue. In the last 2 years alone, we are now exceeding the state in the percentage of children passing, these are our graduates, passing the TSI in English. We're now exceeding the state passing the exam in math. What that means, folks, our children are going to college, they're not taking remedial classes anymore, and I just showed you, we have more children graduating, more children going to college, and what this is showing you is they're coming in better prepared, they're not taking as many remedial classes. That is the direction we're going. And in 2 years, with a focus on this, we're already exceeding the state average. So again, this is who we're going to be, folks. This is what we're about. One of the biggest indicators around college readiness is AP and IB, right? Those have been around since we were kids, back in the 1970s. And you can see we have now over 1,850 students taking AP and IB classes. By the way, that's before our expansion of IB that I just showed you earlier. So these numbers are going to blow up significantly. I mean, they're going to be much higher over time. But already with that, we're seeing more children passing those AP exams, going from 16% to 23%. We also are seeing, or even going back in the early grades, we have more of our children now that are not only taking algebra, a 50% increase by 8th grade, more of our children taking 9th grade English in 8th grade, almost 46%. Look at the performance. We've more than doubled the number of students and have not seen any reductions in performance. One of the things that we know for high poverty families, we have children that are gifted, but yet parents don't know to have them diagnosed and to be tested for that. Families of means, they know that. By the way, some of them pay thousands of dollars. We have universal screeners now in 1st and 5th grade for every student, identifying these advanced students. And because of that, for the first time in our history, our state is matching the state in advanced children in elementary school. So again, think about this, right? We're recognizing advanced children in elementary school. We're exposing more of our children to 8th grade algebra, 9th grade English, and 8th grade. We're exposing them to more AP and IB. We're getting them ready for the SAT. We're getting them past the TSI while we're graduating them, and we're getting them into colleges. That is who we are, folks. So I want to make it clear, that is who we are. So, in closing, the work is about changing these data points. Because it is not fair to tell a child that based on where you're born, for no other reason, just being born into that community, into that family, that income situation, that this is your probability of graduating from college. When they're born, folks, this is not a 12th grader, this is at birth. By the way, overlay teenage pregnancy, overlay reduced lifespans, overlay all the things that you would be fearful for your family. That's what my high poverty families are seeing every single day. And that's what the statistics show, just for them being born into that situation. That is not right. So we will own this. This is who we are. This is what the work is about. Everybody who's joining my team, they know this is the work. And that is the direction we're going. And we've seen these quotes before, right? And what we have to ask ourselves, and we have our city manager here, and I just gotta applaud her courage, because she's making some tough decisions, trying to promote more equitable growth. And she gets a lot of pushback. But she's seen that chart, right? She knows, even if she hasn't seen those data points, she knows what that chart looks like in terms of the green, right? The block 1 and block 4, right? Because all of us can see it if we drive over there in those neighborhoods. And so the question for us, we have amazing things that are happening in our city. So as we look at what's happening, the growth, the potential, can we learn from the past? Because folks, we will own education. We will hold us accountable to ensure that our children have have access to a high quality education. What I can't own though, and I'll just share this quick story. We have thousands of children that have learning disabilities, thousands. And I asked my staff, tell me what's driving that. I want to understand that, because I have children myself, and I'm always worried about those situations. And they say, the large percentage of them, these families live in dilapidated housing, and they're exposed to lead on a daily basis. That's what's causing the learning disabilities. I said, look, we'll own education. I can't own the lead, folks. I can't own the dilapidated housing. That's where I need your help. So what I ask of you, two simple things, not simple, but two big things. Stay with us. This work is long-term work. It's gonna take time. By the way, with standards getting more rigorous, things will get worse in our state before they get better, but it's for good reasons, because we're raising expectations. We're trying to create better alignment at K-12 with higher ed. I'm showing you the direction we're going. I'm showing you what our children are capable of if we align our supports together, if we work with you. But I need your support as we look at how this city evolves and grows, to learn from the past so that we don't continue what we have right now, which is such a segregated city that has just created so many challenges. And I have to remind my teachers and my principals and all my staff, remember what you're here for. Remember what the work is. I know it's overwhelming. I know you're struggling with this child, but this is the work. And folks, all I ask is give our children a shot. Thank you.
Great, well done. Thank you. So we're going to do a couple of questions.
Yeah, please.
Pedro, thank you for that fantastic report on what's going on at SAISD. Clearly, you are the right man at the right time, and your board is 100% behind you, and that's why good things are happening. And you've got a staff that's completely and utterly committed to your vision, and so that's why those needles are moving. But you're right, it's long-term. And actually, anything that we do in this city is long-term, because we've had issues in this city for a long time. So it's all of us and that commitment, that community commitment, that's going to make things happen. So with that, we'll ask if there's a couple of questions that anybody might have. We're running a little late, so if you could state your question quickly, that would be good. Anybody with a question? All right, going, there we go, right over here. Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry. So how about, sorry, Brian Dillard, LSA 300. Any other LSA folks in the house? How badly does this affect the chamber, and how closely do you guys work together with regard to all the various chambers and the school district?
So first of all, the chambers are amazing partners. Everything from supporting even our last two tax elections, conversations, we have more children now job shadowing different employers. And the chambers, what I love is that they know that we have to work together on this, because it's not just about education. It's about economic development. It's about the type of companies that will come to San Antonio. It's about the access that these children need to have to create employment opportunities.
So when you ask any business person, what is issue 1, 2, and 3? It's workforce development. It's having that primary material that makes businesses work, and that is the people, having them ready to take the jobs that exist today. And then the concern is the ones that are coming for tomorrow. And so we work very closely with Pedro, with all the superintendents, in fact, with the city, to make a concerted effort. Number one, in funding. That has been the biggest challenge at the state level. And then to work together so that as kids come out, that the expectation of what they're bringing to the table works for what is actually needed at the workplace. So it's a great partnership. Any other questions? Yes, please. There's a mic coming up.
Rochelle Everett with Bank of America Community Engagement. Thank you for all the wonderful information. My question is more on an individual level. How do you identify the call to action for individuals from SAISD that have gone on to do other things? What are the first steps to get involved and help you in your mission?
So, like I said, we own, and I am blessed to have such an amazing board who has the courage to have these conversations, address these issues head on. And so for us, internally, we're making it very clear about this is the direction we're going. It is going to create pushback, right? Because our district has had a history of different special interests who've gotten their way, and it was not always in the best interest of our children. What I love is that my board is willing to take that on. By the way, that hasn't necessarily been the history of our district. What I love right now, and Richard said this, I think we're blessed that we're here at the right time when the community, frankly our state, was ready for us to have these changes. And so, but we're going to continue to need your support. And I will tell you especially, and I'll say this for my trustees, who have grown up their lives here in San Antonio, they need help and support, because when they make these tough decisions, they have to face some of the individuals they've known for 20 years who just will not agree with the decision we made. And those individuals don't have the access to the details that we have. And so where I need help from the community is support my trustees, support my teachers, because they're facing these children every single day. And I'm just trying to make sure that we don't burn them out. I'm trying to make sure that we don't overwhelm them.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. We'll stop the questions there, but Pedro will be here, his team will be here, and of course we'll be here to chat with you about any ideas and opportunities that you have. But before you go, Pedro, we've got a couple of gifts that we'd like to give you. So we've got several books that we'd like to donate so that you can put them in your schools and hopefully inspire young people. This first one is called Sarah the Cyber Hero. As you all know, we have a burgeoning cyber industry in San Antonio, and so we'd like to see if you can put that in one of your libraries. And then we also have another book, which is a Caldecott winner. It's called So You Want to Be President. And hopefully this will inspire young people to do what you're doing and lead the way and lift up our city. So thank you. Thank you all very much, and we stand adjourned.
Thank you, so good. Thank you.